Hey friends, it's Christy. So excited to be back with you on the Lawnfawn YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be making a card using the brand new Carrot Bout You and all the speech bubbles plus butterfly kisses. So I've stamped those images out on some Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth Premium White cardstock with jet black ink, and I'll be coloring with my Copic markers. I'm going to start with my carrot cars, which I think are so quirky and cute, especially combined with those adorable little bunnies. I'm using YR04, YR07, and YR09. Going to place that YR09 down at the bottom, creating a bit of shadow on the bottom edge of the vehicle, and then also outlining the little lines at the top edge to give those some definition. And then I'll blend that out with the YR07 and fill in the top area with the YR04. Then I'll color the second carrot car in the exact same way, and I love that we have the two different sizes. I think that really adds to the storytelling element of how you can create different scenes, especially since there are the two different sizes of bunnies to fit inside them. I just think it makes it extra fun that we have options of which size we want to use, or if you want to combine them both on a card like I'm going to do here. And then while I have these markers out, I'm going to color in a few of my tulips. I'm just using the darkest two shades though, because I wanted them to look just a little bit different than the carrot cars. And then for that top little rim on the car, I wanted to go just slightly softer. So I kept the YR04 and added to that the YR01 and YR02. I'm placing the YR04 toward the back of the headrest, I guess, area, and then blending forward with the lighter two shades. And then for the greenery that is sticking out the top of the carrot at the back of the car, I wanted to go with some greens that were very rich and vibrant. So I used G14, G19, and G29, starting with the G29 closest to the carrot, and then blending out toward the tips with the G19 for the midtone and the G14 for the highlight. And I'm just really making sure to scrub over the edge of the G19 with that G14 to break up any harsh lines. Then I'll take away the G29 and add in the G12, and I'm going to do my grasses. I wanted them to match, but just not be quite the same as the carrot tops, so I just went slightly softer on those, placing the darkest shades down at the bottom of the grasses and the highlight up at the top of each of those. Those are all from the Butterfly Kisses stamp set. And then for the leaves on my tulips, I'm going to start with the darkest, the G19, and then I'm going to skip all the way down to the G12 to blend that out, because it's just a very little area to blend out in, and I wanted to have that nice softness that the G12 brings to this combo. So I'll quickly fill in all of the rest of those, and then we'll move on to our tires. I'm going to use T3, T5, and T7 for those. And I'm placing the T7, that darkest shade, at the bottom left of each of those tires. Create a little bit of darkness there. And then I'll blend out on either side of that with the T5. That's creating a bit of a highlight on the top right side of each of those tires. And that is where I will fill in with the T3. And I think any of the gray families would work well for the tires. I just chose the toner grays because I'm going to be using some Storm Cloud cardstock, and I think the toner grays are a good match for that. I wanted to leave the inside of the wheel white, but to add just a little bit of definition to that, I used a touch of T0 in the bottom left side. And then I'm going to move on to my adorable tiny bunnies. I love coloring bunnies because there's so many fun ways to do them, different combos and spots and stripes and things. But for this particular card, I wanted them to be white bunnies. So I used W00 and E70. It gives them just the softest kind of grayish tone in the shadowed areas, which I really like. So I used the E70 first and blended out with the W00. Then I colored in their noses and gave them some rosy cheeks with RV11 and used RV11 and RV10 to do the insides of their ears. I'm also going to use those shades on my butterfly, but I wanted it to be just a shade darker, so I brought in RV13 and added that to the combo. And then I'm going to darken up even further, keeping that RV13, but adding in RV14 and RV17. And I'll do a few more of my tulips. And my RV13 is a little bit leaky, so I took off the other cap as well, just to equalize the pressure in the barrel so it doesn't do that. Usually if I forget to, I end up regretting it. So I'm going to move on to my final tulips, and for those I'm going to use Y13, Y15, and Y17. I wanted to do orange, pink, and yellow tulips. I just thought that was a really bright springtime combination. And then for my little sign, I'm using some pale browns, E50, E51, and E53. I stamped the word Spring Festival in there because that kind of was going along with the little story I was telling in my head, but there are different options that you can put in that sign. I used BG10 to add a tiny bit of shading to the speech bubbles, which are from the All the Speech Bubbles stamp set. The sentiments inside them are from the Carrot Bout You stamp set. And now I'll trim these images out with their matching dies. For the background, I've taken a piece of Bristol Smooth Surface cardstock and trimmed that down with the small mini slimline stackables. I used the largest one in that die set, and I'm going to add a sky background using the cloudy stencil. And I'm going to take some salvaged patina distress oxide ink and start on the top edge of that stencil, pressing down a bit more firmly and then lifting off with the pressure as I go up so it gets a bit softer. And then I'll turn that stencil around and choose a new cloud formation and just continue blending down. I was particular with which cloud formation I was choosing because I knew that there was only going to be a little bit of sky showing on this card, so I wanted to make sure that I had a couple of rows of clouds that would be close enough together that they would show. And then I just added a little extra ink down at the bottom so that those bottom clouds wouldn't be so stark white. I'm going to do a little bit of splatter detail to add some extra movement and interest to this panel. So I just pressed some of that ink onto an acrylic block, mixed it up with some water to make it more fluid, and then I'll tap it off the edge so I get a nice fine little splatter, and then I'll set that aside to dry. I also trimmed down another of the small mini slimline stackables and then cut the top with the stitched hillside borders. And for this one, I'm going to add 3 colors of Distress Oxide ink, starting at the bottom with Twisted Citron. I just wanted to have a little bit of warmth in this combo so it didn't get too blue toned. Then I'll bring in some Lucky Clover. I'll blend that on from the top edge and then go back to the Twisted Citron ink blending tool and just work my way back and forth until they're a bit more blended. And then once I'm happy with how that's looking, I'll bring in my last shade, which is going to be Pine Needles, which is just a little bit darker than the Lucky Clover. So I'll deepen up that top edge and really highlight that stitching detail. And then I'll go back and blend back out once again until everything is nice and smooth. And then I'm going to do some splatter detail on this one as well. And I'm just going to use the lightest and the darkest shade for that. So the Twisted Citron and the Pine Needles. So I'll splatter both of those, starting with the lighter shade. That way I don't have to rinse my paintbrush off in between. and then I'll go in with the darker shade. I like how the lighter shade looks on the darker blended sections, and then the darker just adds a lot of interest as well. So I'll set this panel aside to dry, and in the meantime, I'm going to die cut my road, and I used the road borders for that, both pieces. I did one out of the storm cloud cardstock, like I mentioned, and the other out of white cardstock. So I'm just going to use the glue tube to add a bit of liquid glue on either side of those little dash lines, and then I'll line these two pieces up and glue them down into place, just squeezing it together to make sure everything is on there nice and straight, and then I'll set that piece aside for later. So now that my grass piece is dry, I'm going to pop that in my MISTI so I can stamp the rest of my sentiment. So I'm using a VersaFine Onyx Black ink to stamp out Easter is on its way from the Carrot Bout You stamp set. You could also do Spring is on its way, or a couple other sentiments that are really cute and punny that go well with this set. But I stamped that down twice to make sure it was nice and bold. And then I took a piece of fake tan cardstock and cut that down to 6 by 6 and scored it in half at the 3-inch mark to make a mini slimline card. And I'm stamping on the inside using pumpkin spice ink. So I did some images from Carrot Bout You and then another speech bubble from all the speech bubbles. And then I'm going to stamp my sentiment inside the speech bubble and an extra little egg in the bunny's hand. And the sentiment says, "I'm so excited," which is super, super adorable. Again, I stamped that down twice to make sure it was nice and bold and legible. And then I'm going to pick out some pattern paper from the Fruit Salad 6 by 6. I wanted to go with the orange gingham to match the orange of my carrot cars. So I'm going to tear that out, and I'll trim that down with the large mini slimline stackables, the largest one. So I'll run that through my die cutting machine, which basically cuts the piece of paper exactly in half. So that die is 3 inches by 6 inches. So I will glue that to the front of my card so that we have that really beautiful pattern paper in the background. I'm just pinching the corners to make sure it's on there nice and straight and smoothing that down into place. And then I'll take my sky background and glue my grass to the front of that, just lining up those bottom two corners. And then I'll take the road and line that up right underneath the edge of the hillside. I love that the slope of both of these matches perfectly. So I'll make sure that that is lined up just where I want it and press that down. And then I'll use my Cutter Bee Teflon coated scissors to trim off any excess that's hanging over the sides. I've added some foam tape to the back of the focal panel to give it a bit of dimension and lift on the card, and then I'll line that up in the center using that gingham as kind of a guide, making sure there's equal amounts on all 4 sides, and then pop that down. And now I can bring in my images. I'm going to start with the little bunnies and their carrot cars. I want to glue them into the driver's seat. First I added the glue on the wrong side of the big bunny, so I had to flip him over and add the glue to the front. And then I could add him so that it looks like his hand is right on that steering wheel. Really, really cute. And I'll do the same for the little bunny, just popping him into his sized car. Then I'll add them to the scene, but I'm not going to glue them down just yet. I'm going to use them as placeholders to figure out where I want some of the other images to go. Starting with that sign that is showing them the way to the spring festival, I thought it would be really cute if they were taking a little road trip and heading to this little spring fest. So I went ahead and added that. I will say that I added my liquid glue on the back of the grass panel a little bit higher than I normally do. I like to leave a little bit of space so that I can tuck my images down under the edge, but I went a little bit too high on that one today, so I did have to trim off the bottoms of some of the images in order to get them tucked in between the sky and the grass, but that's okay. I added the row of tulips between the two cars, and then I'll go ahead and commit to the placement of those carrot cars because everything else I can kind of tuck behind them pretty easily because the carrot cars are now kind of 3 layers up from that sky background because we have the grass and then the 2 layers of the road. So I am adding the little speech bubble that says I cannot believe it right by the larger bunny. And then the smaller bunny is going to get the speech bubble that says wee. Obviously, he is very excited to be on his way to the spring festival where maybe they'll have a whole lot of other Easter bunnies to hang out with and all kinds of fun Easter games and snacks. And I think they're just going to have a fantastic time. I'm going to add the little butterfly trail towards the back of the scene, and I'll leave that just hanging off the edge for now until that glue is fully dried. I'll add the butterfly in front of that, and then I can start adding in these extra little tulips. I love that we have the individual ones as well as the row because it just enables you to kind of space them out a little bit more and fill in as needed, which I really liked being able to do. I'm also tucking them in so they're leaning a bit in different directions so that they resemble more the line of tulips that are also kind of tilted just slightly to the left or the right so that they don't look all exactly the same. Then in front of the large carrot car, I'm going to add my last 2 tulips. And I went with pink and yellow for the last 2 just because we have so much orange already dominant on the card with the carrot cars. So I just decided to do the other 2 shades since I was only going to have room for the 2. Then those last 2 little grasses I'm going to add down toward the lower part of the scene just to pull some of the images down there near the sentiment and draw more attention to that. So I did one right on the edge of the Easter is on its way, and then the other little grass I'm going to add to the far left just to have a little bit more interest down there as well. I'll grab my cutter bee scissors once again and trim off the end of that bee trail so it lines up with the edge of the focal panel. And then of course I had to add a little bit of glitter, so I'm taking some Stardust stickles and just adding a touch of that to each of the tulips and also to my butterfly's wings. And then I accidentally knocked that last grass over, so I'm going to fix that. And that is going to finish off this card. I had so much fun playing with these brand new stamp sets. I think they're super adorable for spring and Easter. I'll give you another peek at the inside as well. So if you guys enjoyed this one too, please be sure to hit that like button to let me know, or you can leave me a comment down below. I love to read your feedback. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I hope you had a good one, and I'll see you soon in another video. Bye-bye.